We are back with our legal eagles, Ron Coleman and Mike Donnelly, and we turn now to world events. This headline coming from Reuters. An Israeli airstrike triggered a fire that killed 45 people in a tent camp in the Gazan city of Rafah, officials said on Monday, prompting an outcry from global leaders who urged the implementation of a world court order to halt Israel's assault. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the strike had not been intended to cause civilian casualties. Quote, in Rafah, we already evacuated about 1 million non combatant residents, and despite our utmost effort to not harm non combatants, something unfortunately went tragically wrong, he said in a speech in parliament that was interrupted by shouting from opposition lawmakers. A lot of people have said, Mike Donnelly, that this is really bad optics for Israel. And now the UN International Court has put out an order from their chief judge that of the Israel's efforts in Rafah have to stop. And of course, this coming as the ICC has issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and other Israeli officials. So does this change the landscape with this quote unquote tragic mistake?
Well, these kinds of mistakes are tragic and it's unfortunate, but let's remember how this started. This started back in October when Hamas horribly, in the Pearl Harbor of Israel's history, invaded unprovoked and ended up killing 1,300 people and absconding with hundreds of victims as hostages who have been treated in the most despicable fashion. And so when Karim Khan issued arrest warrants for Hamas leaders, it was the right thing to do. Seeking arrest warrants. Seeking arrest warrants from the pretrial chamber against Benjamin Netanyahu and the defense minister Gallant is absolutely absurd and is just ridiculous and hypocritical. Look, let's a couple things here. One, Palestine or Palestinians, Hamas, the Gaza Strip, was brought into the ICC. It should never have been. It's not a state. Israel is. And Article 17 of the treaty, the Rome Statute, so-called, says that it's only supposed to bring prosecutions against states that are unwilling or unable to prosecute or to investigate crimes of war crimes. Israel is fully capable, and there's no reason to believe that they're unwilling to investigate the conduct of the war. In war, there are mistakes that happen. I know I was in a war. I was back in Desert Storm 1, and it's a terrible thing. And what's happening in Gaza is horrible. But how can Israel exist against this existential threat to its existence from Hamas without destroying Hamas? I don't see how it can.
Yeah, well, I mean, the rules of engagement and certainly to retaliate and protect themselves, I think, are justified even in the midst of this horrific attack. That Ron Coleman is bad optically, but at the same time, Mike Donnelly makes a very good point that in war there are going to be casualties. Unfortunately, there may be mistakes, but does this justify what the UN court and the ICC are attempting to do, which is to get Israel to back down?
These organizations have been completely captured by blocks of nations that are hostile to everything you and your viewers and everyone in this conversation holds dear. Not merely uninterested in it, actively hostile to it. Everything they do is about propaganda. Everything they do is about justifying their own lifestyles and maximizing their personal wealth. These people are garbage people. What they have to, of course, everything is good. Once you see that Israel is on the docket of either the International Criminal Court or the United Nations, you know the rest of the story every single time. They don't care about Africans being enslaved. They don't care about Muslims being the victim of mass murder. They don't care about Chinese Muslims. They don't care about Arab Muslims. They don't care about Indonesian Muslims. They don't care about anything but following the money and justifying their existence to the other NGOs that are in the same business. It's not even worth talking about.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think you're right that it isn't worth talking about, and yet it is giving the leftists something to talk about. And so, Mike, when you have these NGOs that are suggesting that now the Biden administration shouldn't give any more help or assistance to Israel. So far, Biden's State Department has stood firm that the ICC doesn't have jurisdiction. They are still standing more or less with Israel, even though I think Biden could do a lot more. Heading into 2024, does this become a political issue in terms of the election? And what should President Trump do to maybe put some pressure on the Biden administration to stand firm with Israel?
It should be an issue. We need to talk about it. And I appreciate where Ron is coming from and agree. This is a globalist elite trying to undermine national sovereignty, and that we have to stand against. We go from one rogue prosecutor in New York City to another rogue prosecutor over in The Hague. Okay, they both want to just throw out crazy ideas about who should be convicted of crimes. This is serious business here. The ICC is supposed to be about the most heinous, serious war crimes. And this guy has been involved in the ICC for a long time, so a lot of it probably has to do with trying to advance the court as an internationalist control mechanism. I mean, think about it this way. If Karim Khan was in charge on December 7th, 1941, and 6 months later, he'd be bringing an indictment against Emperor Hirohito, Adolf Hitler, as well as Theodore Roosevelt and Dwight D. Eisenhower.
These international justice regimes or quasi-regimes were created in order to address the world's indifference to genocide that took place during World War II. Not only during World War II, not only the Jews, but it happened in World War II, and it happened on a massive scale to Jews. They have since been entirely turned around from their original purpose, which was not to protect Jews, but to protect humanity. They are merely tools of not only globalists, but vicious, murderous people. Globalism indeed is a cancer. And this is an egregious example of how it spreads.
Jenny, you asked about the campaign. Just one quick thing. So Joe Biden's State Department is culpable here because they have said on one hand we support Israel, on the other hand we're not going to send them ammunition. We have a red line in Rafah. So what Trump needs to do, in my opinion, is be very clear. We stand with civilization. We stand with a democracy, Israel, that's able to investigate if there are any crimes that need to be investigated. What to do about the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, those are important questions. But Israel should not be on trial here. And the ICC has abrogated legitimacy by doing this.
Yeah, well said. And, in the aftermath of World War II, I mean, as both of you have rightly pointed out, this was all about addressing nuclear power and ensuring that we didn't get to that kind of a, hot war instead of a cold war on, nuclear armament, not Israel retaliating rightfully when they've been attacked. And, there's no accountability, it seems, for the ICC. And we've only got about 20 seconds, Mike Donnelly, but where is the accountability for the ICC or the UN court? It seems like they're just able to act without, with impunity.
Well, they do seem to be. They're going to try to aggrandize their role because it matters to them. But Article 51 of the UN Charter says that states can defend themselves. Israel is defending itself, and it should be permitted to do so without this kind of intervention from the ICC. And the Biden administration needs to be more clear.
Well said with our Legal Eagles. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight.